So good evening. I am audible and visible to everybody. Check. We will just wait for one more minute and then we'll start. The others will also join. And I hope all of you are safe, sound, and healthy. So very good evening. Welcome to Let's Crack CBSE Science, which would help you to crack all the 11th Science examination and 12th Science Board examination with Unacademy. So you have top educators here, the content delivered here, best to the quality, and you have a different and great learning experience once you try with an academy. Moving on. So before moving on to the lessons, let me give you a brief introduction about myself, self-intro. Hello, I am Shalini. I am a BTech and MTech holder in computer science and engineering, a teacher by profession with over 14 years of teaching experience. With Unacademy, I am excited to provide an inspiring learning experience to all the students via this online platform. So, today we'll be looking into more of computer networks, more on computer networks, the topic. So, it's basically the chapter 11 and 12 comprised here, but not on fully. We'll have one more session on the same chapter so that the entire topic gets covered. Okay, so before moving on to the lessons, let us talk a few things about Unacademy. Though things are very familiar to you about what Unacademy is and what it offers, and a few additional information too. So, crack all the CBSE Class 12 with India's largest learning platform. So, Unacademy has grown out to be India's largest e-learning platform. It is not just for the reason of the pandemic situation or for the current situation, but also for the reason that for a school-going CBSE student to an aspirant who is preparing for a competitive examinations, you get courses which would help you in the preparation in Unacademy. So Unacademy is the most happening app and it is like a one-stop destination. Okay. So if you get the plus subscription, you get access to, you get unlimited access to the live and recorded courses from the best educators all over. First, introducing the iconic subscription. The iconic subscription. So this iconic subscription will help you to prepare for the CBSE to a better level or to the next level. How? With the help of a personal mentor. So each one of you, when you take up an iconic subscription, is assigned a personal mentor. Okay, this mentor would give you guidance and would help you in aligning a learning strategy as to how you can prepare your studies, how to prepare a timetable, how to get accustomed for the forthcoming examination, And if you have concerns and doubts in your mind, all those can be resolved by having a personal mentor. Now, there is a parent connect wherein you have regular open hours for the parents to discuss the learner's performance report with the mentor. So, how what the parent receives could be on a weekly basis a progress report with concern with his or her what. Okay. So, on the basis of the report, the parent can have a discussion with the personalized mentor, wherein things would be more clear and more strategies and plannings in the learning strategies could be inculcated. Now, the live doubt solution, wherein you can attend exclusive doubt solving classes to solve all your subject doubts. Now, all these features plus the plus subscription features will be enjoyed once you take an iconic subscription. For the class 12, the subscription fee starts from 2,333 per month. Okay. Now, the plus subscription, now your access to the best of Unacademy. Now, once you take up or go for a plus subscription, what you get here is you get access to the daily live classes, okay? Now, wherein you get a chance to chat with the educator, engage in discussions, ask your doubts, and answer via polls. Now, all the features while the live classes going on, all the courses here are well structured and in line with the current examination syllabus. So this would help you to prepare for your examination better. Now, the live test and quizzes, this would evaluate your preparation. This would help to evaluate your preparation with regular mock tests. Okay, regular mock tests and quizzes, and also give an analysis, detailed analysis of your performance. And once you take a subscription based on the subscription plans, based on the budget and the plan that you would love to. So once you get a subscription, you get access to all the live and recorded courses available in Unacademy. That means the resources of Unacademy. So you needn't worry if you miss out a live session, because for the same you can watch the recorded version also. Now this is how things would look like. A live session will have the indicator indicating that this is the live session that is going on now. Now once you have downloaded and installed the Unacademy learning app in your smartphones, right, you get intimations also when a session is going to start, okay, based on the goals that you have selected. And inside that goal, if a particular session is going on live or before prior to the live session, you get an intimation as message. Okay. So even if you miss out a live session, you can see the recorded sessions also. The recorded as well as the forthcoming sessions would be shown as how it is here. Okay. Now, this is how the comprehensive syllabus would look like. You would have the different subjects, and underneath each subject, you will have the various courses. Okay, the courses on various topics or chapters that are being covered by the various educators. So, wherein you can go and visit and watch according to your need and requirement. Then this is the Unacademy learning app that you need to download from the Play Store and install in your smartphones. I repeat, it is the Unacademy learning app that you need to download and install in your smartphones, and see the menu here. Now once you select this, you can, from here you can select your goal. That means for which examination that you are preparing yourself, and based on the goal, you get redirected to the courses, right? Now, to get access to the courses, all you need to do is get the subscription. So, as a matter of fact, for the students of CBSE class 12, the goal selected should be class 12. Okay. Apart from the app, there is a Telegram channel too. Now, to get access to the channel, all you need to do is you should have the Telegram app downloaded in your smartphones. And the link here, Quest 12 CBSE Commerce, all you need to do is type the link in the URL as shown and join to the channel, wherein you get updates posted by Unacademy as well as the various educators. Okay. Now, once you have downloaded the learning app and then you have selected your goal to be the CBSE class 12, now you would be redirected to which is the plan and which is the subscription, the type of subscription that you would love to choose. Either it is a plus subscription or the iconic subscription. Now, the details regarding the plus as well as the iconic was already mentioned in the previous slide. Right. When you go for an iconic subscription, see, when you go for a plus subscription, you get access to the live as well as recorded classes. You have live test and quizzes. Okay. Now, Creative Corner, which comes as a complimentary package to you. Now, if you go for the iconic subscription, you would have a personal mentor and even a parent connect program wherein the parent also can indulge in a communication conversation with the mentor and get the report of his or her ward. And if you take an iconic subscription, apart from all the features, you get the features of plus subscription also. Okay. Now, here is the detailed description about the subscription fee with respect to class 12. Now, here the description shows the various subscription plans for the plus subscription, okay, ranging from a 3-month plan to a year plan. Fine. And across each of the plan is listed the cost incurred for each of the plan. Okay. Now, if you apply my promo code SLYT, you get a discount of 10% on the subscription fee. So be it plus or be it iconic, you get a 10% discount on applying my referral code. So a 3-month subscription would get reduced to 5,850 and a year subscription would cost you around 13,500. Okay. Now, if you go for the iconic subscription, now the different plans available are a 6-month, a half yearly plan, as well as a 12-month, that is a full year plan. Okay, and across each of the plan are listed the cost of the subscription fee for the plans also. And here again, if you apply my promo code, you get a 10% discount on the subscription. Okay, so here the 6 months plan would now cost you only 15,300 and a year subscription would cost you around 25,200. So these are the details with respect to Unacademy and the various subscription details. Now, as you all know, we are dealing with class 12 computer science and today we'll be looking into the second chapter with respect to computer networks. Okay. So we'll be conducting it as different sessions and today is our first session. So these are the contents that we'll be covering in today's class. We'll be looking into the modulation, okay, the process of modulation, the types of modulation as well as collision, wireless network. So these are the topics that we'll be covering in today's session. So what are they? Modulation, the process of modulation, types of modulation, as well as how collision happens in the wireless network. So let's move in. So modulation. So we have been talking about networks. We had seen what the definition of network is. Why did we go for networking? See, this is not something that we need to learn because the current situation itself has taught us the real purpose or the real use of networks, right? So modulation. So in with respect to networks, there are certain things that we need to learn. So we learned all the basic characteristics and now we're going to see what are the techniques for changing the characteristics of a signal. Okay. So now let us understand the definition of modulation. Okay. So just a minute prior to starting. So, modulation is a process of changing the characteristics of the carrier wave by superimposing the message on a high frequency signal. Okay. So, modulation, it is a process. Now, what exactly the process does? It changes the characteristics of a carrier wave. Okay. So, there is something called as a carrier wave. Okay. And the process modulation, what it attempts to do is, yes, Karthik, very good evening and welcome to the class. So, what it attempts to do is it is trying to change the characteristics of the carrier wave. Now, how is the change being done? By superimposing the message signal. Okay, so you have something else. What is it? It is the message signal, right? So how is it done? You are changing the characteristics by imposing it on another. So what do you mean by imposing? You are placing one on the other. It is simply like if you are placing one on top of the other, right? So this is how the process does. So what it does is it is trying to change the characteristics of the carrier wave. Now what is a carrier wave? So for the time being, let us understand the literal meaning. Okay, the carrier wave is a wave which is actually carrying. Okay, and some process of superimposing. Now, how is superimposing to be understood? You just need to understand that one is. It is simply like one is kept on top of the other. Okay, so this is how the combined effect is what you call mean by the term superimpose, and superimposing the message signal on a high frequency signal. Okay. Now, whatever data that we are trying to send across should be imagined as a signal. Now, if you ask me what exactly is a signal, signal is the signal can be imagined as a wave, okay, as an ocean of wave. Now, what happens to the ocean of wave? We have so much of waves coming up, right? So there are lots of waves, and it is like the ocean of waves has to be equated or should be imagined when you're considering something called as a signal. Yes, good evening, Ayana, and welcome to the class. Okay. Now, so even if it is a carrier wave or your message signal, both are in the form of a wave. Now, but they are not same, they are different. So if you want to send a message, so you cannot send a message as such. You need some carrier to send the message. Is the idea clear? If you want a data to be transmitted or if a message to be sent from a sender to the receiver, it cannot be sent as such. What do you need? You need the help of a carrier wave to send the signal. Okay. So what exactly modulation does is it helps you in this process. Okay. How does it help? It is a process by changing the characteristics of the carrier wave. You change the characteristics of the carrier wave by superimposing the message on the high frequency signal. So we'll come to the definition later on. For the time being, just understand this definition as such. We'll be dissecting and learning this in parts. Okay. So see the process of modulation. You have a message signal or a signal that is to be transmitted. Now, in this case, the signal might not have the actual strength to get it carried till the destination. Is the idea clear? The signal might not have the strength on its own for it to be carried from the sender to the receiver. Now, who takes the help or who comes to rescue you here? The carrier signal. Is the idea clear? Who comes to rescue you here? The carrier signal comes to rescue you. So see here, there is a modulator which takes to feed in, okay, or it takes two inputs. What are the inputs that it takes? It takes a message signal as well as the carrier signal. And some sort of superimposition happens here. That means some kind of merging happens between the message signal as well as the carrier signal, and then you get the output as the modulated signal. So this is how the process of modulation happens. So it is simply like summing up. You have your data plus the carrier to generate the modulated form. Is the idea clear? So this is how the process of modulation happens. Now to include a message. Now the message can be a data, a speech, that means a voice, or an image. Okay. another wave, to include a message, another wave, a message signal that carries the data to be transmitted needs to be imposed on top of the carrier signal. Okay. So I told you, whenever you're considering the signal, whether it be a message signal or a carrier signal, you need to imagine it in the form of a wave, right? So how does a wave look like? So this is how a wave would look like, right? And this can be considered as a principal axis, wherein the wave would travel up, then come down and travel in the negative side. Fine. So this is how a wave would be traveling, right? Now, all the heights that it can achieve in the positive side of the axis as well as in the negative side, right? So the height that it is achieved in the positive side, or the maximum height that it is reaching on the upper side of your axis, can be called as the crest, and the wave that is coming down to the negative side, it can be treated as the trough. So these are the names associated with the highest peak value. When it is moving in the positive direction, it is named as crest, and in the negative direction, it is named as the trough. So when you have to include a message, now, we told that the message cannot be transmitted as such. It needs the help of a carrier signal to transmit it, right? So, when it is taking the help of a carrier signal to transmit the data, now what happens? Some superimposition or some addition of both the signals happen, and this is how the modulated signal is generated. Okay. So, what this modulation actually does? It alters the shape of the carrier wave. Okay, so the carrier wave shape is actually changed here. Now, why? Because when you consider the message signal and the carrier signal, the message signals are usually treated as a weaker signal, or the ones with 2021 edition. You do not have it. Which is the text that you're following? Karthik, which is the text that you're following? Sumita Arora. Yes, these topics are there. I think in both the editions it is there. See the second chapter with respect to computer networks. Yes, Sumita Arora only. Please see the second chapter with respect to computer networks, like computer networks 2. I think you have topics there. It's okay if you do not have it. You can then listen here, and if any doubts pops up, you can please write it in the chat so that all those things that I know would be cleared now itself. Okay. Only one chapter is there. Actually, you have a portion. I mean, the computer networks chapter, it is divided into two sections wherein you have to learn a few more things and then the terms. Okay. And for certain topics was deleted, and those deleted topics were from the second chapter of computer networks. Okay. So these are the basic things that you would be learning with respect to communication and network concepts. You are class CSE or class 12th CSE student or IP? Karthik, which is it? You are a CS student or an IP student? Modulation is deleted. As far as I know, you need to learn about the amplitude and frequency modulation. CS only. Okay. Amplitude and frequency modulation, but the other topics are deleted. I mean, the networking, the terminologies, the commands, all those things that you needn't have to learn in detail. I've just included the modulation and some details with regards to the collision also. Okay. Now, okay. Now this can be also learned for your general information also. Now when you're learning the frequency and the amplitude, the different parameters for the wave and where it is going to be used and all such things. Okay. Okay. So shall I continue? So what modulation does is it will alter the shape of the carrier wave to encode the speech or data information that is to be carried. Okay, so what happens? The shape of the carrier wave is actually changed to encode the speech or data information that is to be carried. So what happens? A superimposition of the message signal. Yes, okay, Karthik. Superimposition of the message signal and carrier wave results in the modulated wave. Okay. It's okay, you can listen so that at least you will have the general information about the process of modulation, what are the different techniques. Okay, though we are not looking so much into detail, we are just looking a part of it. Okay, the encoded wave is then transmitted. So, what is encoding? When you have changed it to a new form, and this new form is called as the encoded wave, and this is a wave that is transmitted to the destination. Okay, so why exactly do we need modulation or why is this process necessary? Okay. Now, I can give you an example wherein imagine that you are trying to throw a paper. Okay. So, how do you throw the paper? You would just fold the paper and then throw it. So, what is the maximum distance that the paper travels or the maximum distance with which you can throw the paper? Okay. You have a certain calculation, right? But imagine that you're wrapping a stone inside the paper and then throwing it. And then imagine the distance that it would be taking or it would be traveling. Okay. So in that case, what happens? It will travel over a larger distance, right? So likewise, we can consider that there is a paper as well as a stone, and wherein we can equate it to the message signal as well as a carrier signal, and when they were superimposed together, see the distance that it is covering. Okay, now we saw that it could cover a very larger distance also, and hence we understand that modulation is actually needed. So this is the purpose of modulation. Fine. Now, what are the major types of modulation? So, moving on to the major types, modulation is a technique in which some characteristic of a carrier signal is varied in accordance with a message signal. Okay. So, what exactly is a modulation? It is a technique in which some characteristics of a carrier signal is varied in accordance with a message signal. Now, we are going to see what are the characteristics of the carrier signal that would be varied here. Now see the properties of the wave that is being changed. It can be either amplitude or frequency. So it's either the amplitude or the frequency that is going to be changed. Okay. So when the amplitude is changed, okay, when any of these properties gets changed or when the amplitude gets changed, what happens? The modulation technique is called as amplitude modulation. And when the frequency is changed, that technique is called as the frequency modulation. Is the idea clear? So it's based on the properties, the different terminologies as associated. If it is the amplitude property that you are going to change, that means it is termed as amplitude modulation, and when you're trying to change the frequency of the wave, it is called as the frequency modulation. Okay, so now let us understand what exactly is the amplitude. So amplitude is its maximum distance from its undisturbed position. So undisturbed position is your central axis. Okay, and the maximum distance that it can reach, or the maximum height that your wave can reach, is called as the amplitude. So it is measured in the form of the height of the wave. Is the idea clear? So when you have, when you have the wave, we know that it is having a crest as well as a trough, right? So the maximum height reached in the crest, or the maximum height reached in the trough, is actually the amplitude. It is the maximum height of the wave. Now let's see the second property. What is the second property? The frequency, right? So frequency of a wave is the number of waves produced per second by a source. Okay, so the number of waves produced per second by a source, or in other words, it is measured as the number of waves that pass a certain point in 1 second. Now, suppose to understand this definition, just understand that there is a line here and you are just imagining the waves passing like this. Okay, now the waves are passing, they're passing through the line and it is a fixed point. Okay, this is a certain point. The line can be considered as a certain point, and you are going to watch the movement of the wave for 1 second. Right? All right. You're about to watch the movement of the wave for 1 second, wherein you would count the number of waves that would pass this line or pass this particular point. The point meaning the line. Okay. So how many times the wave is going to pass, or how many waves are passing through this line. So this can also be a measure of frequency. Or if you find out, it can be, see, you have a wave like this, okay, and imagine that this is a one complete pattern, right? So the one complete pattern can be treated as a wave. Now in 1 second, if you imagine that there are two patterns to be and this is your 1 second duration, and when you see that a complete wave repeats its pattern two times within a time period of 1 second, you can say that the number of waves produced per second by the source is 2, and hence that is the frequency. So either of the way or either of the definition can go well here. So it is either the number of the waves that is produced per second by the source, or it is measured as the number of waves that pass a certain point in 1 second. Okay. Now, we just saw the different properties. Now, what we are going to see is the different modulation techniques based on the properties. So, we are now trying to look for amplitude modulation, right? Now, we had already seen the purpose of modulation, right? The purpose of modulation, only when the signal gets modulated or when it is embedded with the carrier signal can it travel to a larger distance. So this is what we actually saw, right? So imagine that this is your modulating signal or your message signal, okay? And see here the carrier signal. So whenever you're considering a carrier signal is a signal with a higher frequency, okay? Only if it is having a higher frequency can it get transmitted to a larger distance. So see here, this is the carrier signal, and the carrier signal is the one with the higher frequency. Okay. Now the message signal is the modulating signal. Its intensity, that is the amplitude, will impact the carrier signal. So we are going to change the characteristics of what? We are going to change the characteristics of the carrier signal. And what exactly would be bringing a change to the carrier signal? The amplitude of your message signal is going to bring the change. And see here, whenever you're having a crust, see the amplitude of the carrier signal is in its high, right? So whenever there is a crust, actually the value of your carrier signal is high. And as you watch, whenever there is a trough is the downward motion, right? Whenever you're having a trough, you see that the intensity or the strength or the amplitude of your carrier signal tends to decrease. Is the idea clear? So this is how amplitude modulation happens. Is the idea clear? The amplitude of the signal varies with the changes in the amplitude of the message signal. Actually, whom are we trying to change? We are trying to change the carrier signal, and this carrier signal is getting changed with respect to the amplitude of your modulating signal or your message signal. Is that all right? So this is how you would be trying to transmit. Okay. And this is the end result, or this is your modulated signal. And this is how the amplitude of the signal varies with change in the amplitude of the message signal. Fine. So what happens in amplitude modulation? The strength of the carrier signal, that is the amplitude, is varied as per the changes in the amplitude of the modulating signal. So in this way, the overall amplitude or envelope of the carrier. Now see how it is happening. The how does the modulating signal act as? It would be acting as an envelope for your carrier signal. It is actually acting as an envelope and it is actually protecting. Okay, so this is how amplitude modulation happens. Okay, so in this way, the overall amplitude or envelope of the carrier is modulated to carry the actual message. Okay, so next, which is a property that we are trying to change, which characteristics are we trying to change? We are trying to change the frequency. So hence, what type of modulation? Frequency modulation. Okay. Now, one more thing that you need to notice when you're trying to implement amplitude modulation, see, every wave or every signal has a lots of property, and one among the characteristics of the wave is amplitude, the other characteristics frequency. Likewise, you have umpteen number of characteristics like phase, then you have wavelength, etc. Okay. So, see, when you're trying to modulate amplitude, only the characteristics, that is the amplitude, gets changed, or there is a change only in the characteristic called as amplitude, and all other characteristics would remain the same. Okay. If you're considering the frequency, see, the carrier signal has the same frequency as that of what it had. And if you consider the phase or wavelength also, it is going to be the same. So what is the only change that has happened to the carrier signal? The amplitude has changed. And how has it changed? Based on the message signal or your modulating signal. So whenever you had a crust, what happened? You had a higher amplitude with respect to the carrier signal, and as you move towards the trough or as the signal moves down, what happens? The carrier signal tends to have a smaller amplitude. Okay, so this is what happens in amplitude modulation. Now we're looking into the frequency modulation. So here we have a modulating signal here. So the message signal is the modulating signal. Its intensity, that is the amplitude, will impact the carrier signal here. So is it actually the amplitude that is going to going to impact here? We are actually trying to change the frequency of what? Frequency of the carrier signal, right? So see, this is the carrier signal with a common frequency, and see how the modulated signal has changed. Whenever there is a crust, see, the frequency increases, and whenever there is a trough, the frequency decreases. Okay. Yes, Amritesh, very good evening and welcome to the class. Fine. So, whenever there is a crust, what happens? The frequency increases, and whenever you have a trough, see, the frequency is decreasing. Frequency meaning the number of wave patterns covered in 1 second duration, right? So see here the modulated signal. So this is how the frequency varies with the change in the amplitude of the modulating signal. So as there is a change in the amplitude, so is a change in the frequency with respect to the carrier signal. Now what you need to understand here is which is the only characteristics that is brought change. We are bringing change to the frequency, right? So when we are trying to bring change to the frequency, what we need to understand is all the other characteristics would be remaining intact. Is the idea clear? All the other characteristics would be remaining intact. in frequency modulation, the frequency of the carrier signal is varied as per the changes in the amplitude of the modulating signal. The frequency of the carrier wave is shifted proportionally to the intensity of the modulating signal. So this is what happens with respect to frequency modulation. Okay. Now, if you're trying to compare AM and FM, now what happens is we know that AM, actually what happens with AM is it can cover a larger area. Okay. Amplitude modulation, it can cover a larger area, but when you consider the frequency, it is actually a lower frequency. So when it is a lower frequency, what happens? It gets susceptible to noise and interference. So that means unwanted signals can creep into the AM. Is the idea clear? So for this reasons, usually news stations uses AM. Why? Because it can reach larger distance. But when you're considering FM, what happens is FM is actually a higher frequency when compared to AM, and for this reason, they are less susceptible to noise. And this exactly is the reason why all the music stations uses FM rather than AM. Is the idea clear? So we learned what was modulation. Now, what is the next term? Demodulation, right? So whenever we are having, or I mean, when we are having a process, and when we could, there should be a strategy for reversing the entire thing too, right? So there is modulation as well as demodulation, right? So demodulation means the reverse procedure of what modulation. So it is a reverse process of modulation wherein data is extracted from the modulated signal, or you retrieve the message signal from the modulated signal. So this is a process which we term as demodulation or the reverse process of modulation. Okay. Next, we are going to learn the collision in wireless networks. Okay. So what exactly is a collision? The collision is a condition that occurs when two or more nodes on a network transmit data at the same time. Okay. So imagine that there is, imagine that we'll take the scenario of a classroom, okay, and we take the scenario wherein there are many students sitting here, or maybe it is a group discussion. Okay, we'll take an example of a group discussion. In that case, you have so many students sitting around in a round table, and then you have a topic thrown, and see, there are chances of collision. Now, how does collision happen in a group discussion? See, when two or more persons are trying to speak at the same time, what happens? We say that the collision has happened, right? So it is a specific condition that occurs when two or more nodes on the network transmit data at the same time. That means two or more persons in the round table or in the group discussion are trying to communicate at the same time. So when you see that your conversation would be get cut, what happens? You would either back off or pause for a moment and then find the time wherein you can hit and speak, and this is how you speak, right? So when there is an argument or when there is a fight, actually none of the voice would be, you can just hear it as noise, but none of the points would be clear to you, right? So collision means a specific condition that occurs when two or more nodes on the network transmit data at the same time. See, so the two-way communication where sending and receiving can take place simultaneously. Okay, so imagine in the telephone, okay, in the telephone network, you can send data, I mean transmit data as well as receive data. You can talk over the phone and also at the same time hear what the other person is speaking. When a two-way communication is allowed, this network is called as a full duplex network. Okay. Think about the radio or a TV transmission. In that case, it is actually not a full duplex communication. What happens there? You can have only communication in one direction, right? Now, let us take the example of a walkie-talkie that is there in the hands of the policeman. Now, in such a device, you can send as well as transmit, but the problem is that you cannot do it at the same time. Okay, while sending of data happens, the receiver has to patiently wait, and only after the entire data is sent is the receiver going to talk, right? So this is a case of a half duplex communication. Now the sending and receiving can happen, but only one at a time. So in wireless networks, if collision occurs, the transmitting nodes cannot detect it because the nodes in the wireless network cannot listen while transmitting. So this is the problem with what? With the wireless networks. So it cannot listen while transmitting. So what can only be done when a collision occurs? It cannot be avoided, but it can be only detected here. In which case? In the case of wireless networks. Okay. So now we're going to see the different strategies which are used to avoid or detect the collision. Okay. So either the avoidance or the detection of collision. See here, the wireless networks implement using. Okay. What are we talking about? The wireless network, right? So the wireless networks implement using CSMA bar CA, whereas carriers sense multiple access collision avoidance. And in the wired networks, what is happening? CSMA bar CD happens. That means carrier sense multiple access collision detection happens here. Carrier sense means the sensing, right? It is sensing, or when there is a multiple access, every time it is actually sensing the carrier signal, and then it is sensing if multiple devices are trying to access it. If such an access happens, we know that there is a collision. So now we're going to check how the collision can be resolved, or how it can be avoided, or how it can be detected. Now, with respect to that, you have two things which are CSMA bar CA as well as CSMA bar CD. Okay. So this is how the CSMA bar CA, that is collision avoidance, work. Okay. So let us see from the first step what exactly happens here. The node first is ready to transmit or talk. Okay, so that means it is ready to transmit a communication or a data, right? In this case, what should it do? It should listen for the other nodes if any transmission is taking place. So it needs to check whether the pathway is clear, right? So when I'm trying to talk, imagine that I'm trying to talk in a group of people. So when I'm trying to talk, what should I check? I need to check if it is silent or nobody else is talking, right? So in that case, I would listen for the other nodes. I would check if any transmission is taking place. Now, in this case, there are two possibilities. Either that somebody is talking, or that it is free, or you are ready to transmit. So these are the two cases that arise when you are trying to talk or transmit data. What happens? You would listen for the network. You would listen for the other nodes, and you would check whether a transmission is going on or whether it is free, so that you can start a conversation, right? Now, if it is busy, what happens? That means somebody is already talking, or a transmission is already happening, right? Now, if you try to attempt to talk, what happens? Definitely collision would happen, right? So when the line is busy, you are supposed to walk back, or what happens? Backing off, or you would wait for a shorter duration of time. Okay. So this is simply like you're sleeping for that particular time. You are sitting very idle. Nothing is going to happen. And then what happens when the duration, or when your wait time? Yes, Pushpendra, hello, good evening, and welcome to the class. And when the wait time is over, what you need to do is just wake up and then go back to step one. Now, what is your actual purpose? You need to transmit the data, or you need to talk, right? So what happens? When you're attempting to talk, you would listen for the other nodes, and you would check whether the line is busy or whether it is free, right? So if it is busy, you need to wait till you can choose a turn of yours. But if it is free, what does it indicates? There is no transmission, right? And it is actually free, and you can send the message, right? So when it is free, what happens? You can send the message, and verify it. Now, once you send, you need some sort of assurance that the message has reached the sender, right? So you need to verify it. How do you verify it? Whether the proper transmission has taken place. Okay. So this is something that you are trying to ensure. Now, how do you ensure it? It can be done by two methods, either by using an acknowledgement or by using the request to send or clear to send method. What is it? Either the acknowledgement method or request to send or clear to send method. Is it fine? So what happens? Whenever a communication has to happen, what happens is it could check if the line is busy or if somebody else is already engaged in a transmission. In that case, what happens? This node would back off and then it would wait for a certain period of time. Now, waiting for a certain period of time is like, yes, Vishal, good evening and welcome. Okay, yes, Rishabh, welcome to class. So what happens? So if it is busy, that means a transmission cannot happen, right? And if it is free, the transmission can happen. And when a message is being sent, what you need to understand is you need to check or verify whether the message has reached the receiver, right? So this verification is either done using the acknowledgement method or RTS or CTS method, that is request to send or clear to send method, right? Now we look into both of them. So there are two versions of CSMA bar CA, collision avoidance. Okay. Now, what happens either with the acknowledgement or with the ready to send or clear to send? So, acknowledgement is generated by the receiver node only if the data frame is received in the valid form. Okay. So, if any discrepancies, yes, Rishabh, my initial classes was with respect to Python, and we had a team number of sessions with respect to that, wherein we had the basic discussion on the language. Then we had a discussion on, the data structures, the searching, sorting, how to implement that in Python. Okay. So if you want to, there is a provision for watching the recorded versions of the same. What you need to do is just log into the channel, that is Let's Crack CBSE Science, and then you can search for my lessons in the in the inside the video sessions, wherein you get the videos of my classes. Okay, is that okay, Rishabh? So these are the two versions, wherein one is with the acknowledgement and one is with the ready to send or clear to send. Okay. So now let's see how it happens with the acknowledgement. Okay. So there are two devices, A and B. And imagine that A wants to communicate with B. Is the idea clear? A wants to communicate with B. So what will A do? A would first listen. A would first listen and then check if the channel is free. Only if the channel is free can it transmit, right? If it is not free, what it happens? It would wait for some more time, right? Till the channel is free for it to transmit. So what happens? It would check whether the channel is free and then transmits the data. And once the data is received and in the valid form, what would happen? The receiver is, who is the receiver? The receiver is B, right? The receiver would send an acknowledgement. Okay. And also that the acknowledgement should reach the receiver in the specified time. If it does not reach, it is like the sender has not received the acknowledgement and it will come like, oh, the message has been lost, and the sender would retransmit the message. Is the idea clear? So this is what happens. So when the channel is free, data transmission happens, and what would happen? The acknowledgement is also sent from the receiver, which would be accepted by the sender. Okay. So this is what happens in CSMA bar CA with acknowledgement. Okay. Now there is a chance wherein the data has reached the receiver and the receiver was sending the acknowledgement, and imagine that the acknowledgement has failed to reach the sender. In that case, the sender has not received the ACK signal. What happens? It would retransmit the data, assuming that the transmission has failed. Okay. Now, this is a next method when we are using CSMA bar CA with RTS, ready to send or clear to send. Now, what happens here? Imagine that you are having more than um, one device for the transmission, wherein you are having A, B, C, and D. Okay. And we are talking about the scenario wherein A is trying to send a data to B. What is going to happen here? A is trying to send a data to B. Okay. Now what will happen? Definitely A has to listen and check if the channel is free. Only if the channel is free will the transmission happen. Right. So when the channel is free, A is ready to transmit. Right. So when A understands that yes, it is ready to transmit, what it does is it will first send the RTS, that is ready to send. Fine. So it is indicating B that yes, I'm ready to send and I will be sending it soon. Now, when it is sending the RTS signal, what is it going to send? It is going to send along with the time. Now, what does the time says? The time in microseconds. What does the time says? So, it is the time that is taken for the transmission. Is the idea clear? So, for 10 microseconds, the channel should be free for the communication between A and B. So, this is what is going to be ensured here. So when A is trying to send RTS signal to B with along with the time, okay, the time in microseconds. So what happens? It would, I mean, the channel would be left free for 10 microseconds. Now, what is the other thing that you need to note here is it is not just A and B that is here. You're having other devices also like C and D. Now, what happens is when it is trying to send the clear to send, that is the receiver is trying to send clear to send. Yes, you can send data for the next 10 microseconds. In this case, what it does is it will also be sending a CTS message to all the other devices other than the sender. Now, why is this done? This is done to ensure that all the other devices would be silent for the next 10 microseconds because the channel is going to be devoted for the communication between A and B. Is the idea clear? It is going to be devoted for the communication between A and B, and for this duration, the other devices that is C and D has to be kept mum. Okay, so so this is how it happens in RTS and CTS. Now what would happen? Now the channel is free and all the other devices are also very quiet. So what will happen? He can send the data, right? So it will send the data to B. Now what will B do? B would send the acknowledgement. Okay. Now once the data is received and once the communication is over for the 10 microseconds, what will it happen? What should the receiver do? Is receiver should acknowledge the data received. How does it acknowledge it? By sending the ACK signal or the acknowledgement signal. Now, when it is sending the acknowledgement signal to the sender understands that yes, the transmission has been done successfully. Now, when the same acknowledgement signal is getting transmitted to the devices C and D, it is an indication to the device that yes, the communication is over and that the channel is going to be anyone can take up for the next transmission. So the transmission is over and the communication channel is free now. So this is the indication with CSMA bar CA with RTS and CTS. Okay. So we had learned the two versions of CSMA bar CA, one with the acknowledgement signal and the other with the RTS or the CTS signal. Okay. So that's all for the day. So today we were looking into the modulation, the process of modulation, types of modulation, and the different collision in wireless networks. Um, so what all did we see? We saw the need for modulation and how the modulation can be done, the entire process, and then the different types of modulation based on exploiting the properties of the wave like amplitude and frequency. And then again, we learned how or when a collision occurs in a wireless networks, how things could be resolved. Okay. So these are the main things that were covered in today's session. So other than the YouTube channel, there is the Unacademy learning app also, which we were telling in the first hand. So to unlock the free content, okay, so the free content can be unlocked using my code also. So this is a code that you need to use for unlocking the free content in the Unacademy learning app. So once you install it, you have to log in, select the goal, and then select the menu button on the top left corner and select the special. Okay, it is a special classes. Okay, once you select the special classes, it will be in the locked format. So to unlock it, you need to use my referral code, that is SLYT, which would unlock you the free content of these special classes. Okay, so do not forget. So I think there is not much doubts today. So before winding up, let me remind you once more of my promo code SLYT, which would help you in getting a 10% discount in the Plus subscription as well as the Iconic subscription. Okay. All the details regarding the Plus and the Iconic subscription was described in the beginning slides. So those who wish to take a subscription, do not hesitate. Take it as soon as possible before the next hike comes. So this would help you in a better level of learning as well as a varied. Okay. So with this note, I am bidding good night and thank you all for attending. For those who have missed it, don't worry. And for those who have joined late, you can see the same in the recorded format also. So with this note, bidding good night and hoping to meet you all in the next class also. Thank you.